What do you say to the people? I know, it's time to wake up. All right, I'll tell them. All right, good morning, everybody. Well, we're back at the milk counter because that's my life. So I'm doing this as kind of a Bearean bunker broadcast supplement because I got to spend my time doing something. I am doing a fast started yesterday at 5:15, and I thought I was going until Wednesday at 5:15, but Thanksgiving's coming up. So what if a guy were to go till Thursday at what time is dinner?
1:30.
1:30. That would be a 90 hour, and pretty exciting. So a really good brother asked me yesterday, he sends me a text, and he says, what about the doctrine of demons? Doctrine of demons. Doesn't that sound like a good thing to talk about? So that doctrine of demons is found in 1 Timothy. And 1 Timothy, they talk about doctrine of demons, and part of the doctrine of demons is the forbidding of marrying and the forbidding of food. Because he knows, in my walk following Jesus, I have chosen to adopt what was described as a biblical diet. And part of that excludes some things that people eat, and you have to think about what you're eating, right? So we don't eat pork, we don't eat crustaceans and stuff like that. So he's asking me, is that the doctrine of demons? And I'm like, A, that's a really good question, because you're processing that stuff. B, it's in the Bible. Paul warns Timothy about it. And so many pastors have said they've actually used that. It's a doctrine of demons, forbidding of foods, eat your ham sandwich, because otherwise you're doing doctrines of demons. Well, that's not what he was talking about. See, Timothy was in Ephesus, and Ephesus was dealing with the people that were converting to following Yeshua, were converting out of some Judaism, but a lot of paganism. And those doctrines of demons were, in many cases, veganism is promoted in many different religions. Also celibacy. So veganism and celibacy are promoted not as personal nutritional health, but as a spiritual way to get closer to the gods. And Paul was saying, don't do that. Stick to the one good God instead of the 70 bad ones. Stick to the one good one, and pay attention to the biblical diet, and then also, he's having stomach problems, have a little wine. So that's my little Bearean Bunker Bible supplement. Some raw milk for you, and believe it or not, raw milk is easier to digest than processed milk. So I'll see you on the Bible study side. Well, good morning, everybody, to a very hurried, smoking Bearean Bunker broadcast. It's spelled B-E-A-R for a reason, if you know, you know. And today we are doing episode 85, and we are starting the book of Galatians.
Finley's not even with us this morning. He's off schedule.
Yeah, Finley, everybody's off. It's Monday. We've got the grandkids. Papa's struggling. I'm used to a quiet house. I'm a terrible person. So let's, we're going to burn through some of these summaries, and whatever. So we've got greetings from Paul. We have no other gospel meaning good news of the kingdom. Not just good news that Jesus died on a blood-soaked cross. How Paul was sent out, accepted in Jerusalem, confronting hypocrisy, by deeds or by faithfulness, slaves or sons. That's the summaries for 1 through 3.
Okay, so, excuse me. Chapter 3. My husband read to me again this morning.
Yep.
Thank you very much. While I was packing snacks. I've done that for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So chapter 3, starting verse 10. For all who rely on the deeds of Torah are under a curse. For the scripture says, cursed is everyone who does not keep doing everything written in the scroll of the Torah. It is clear that no one is set right before God by Torah, for the righteousness shall live by emunah, which is faithfulness. So this has been kind of used against following the Torah correctly. And what this is talking about is, from my understanding here, is that we don't believe that that Jesus's death on the cross was not for anything good. I mean, that was offered to all for salvation.
Because for God so loved the world.
Right. So we don't believe that we are righteous by the things we do. Correct?
Correct.
We believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross for the world, and then you have the opportunity to believe for salvation.
Yep.
And then your walk in observing the Torah is commanded by God.
Yep.
For us to be righteous in His sight.
Yep.
And He wants us to obey Him.
It's exactly. So it's part of our sanctification process. I use the word sanctification because that's a real familiar word. People are like, well, you're saved by faith, but your walk is sanctified. So you're either walking in faithfulness or you're not.
Now, I may have said a couple words in there that are not the proper ones. So,
but they're good. They're decent words because people know believe. Like, for instance, what does believe mean?
What does believe? To trust it? What does believe mean?
But,
I've always been taught to believe is to trust in.
What does trust mean?
To rely on?
What is relying?
I don't know.
Right. So the word believe that we use has automatically a element of faithfulness welded to it. You cannot have the word believe without the word faithfulness. It's a marriage. You're not trying to separate, make work.
So I think what would be really important is, because I'm not the only one. I mean, I still get caught up in my old thinking and stuff, is maybe to clarify on this a little bit.
Yeah.
On what I said, because I hope I might have.
Nope, you did not. You said everything the way you would say it, and it's just as we understand our walk.
Yeah, but like this part here about, for all who rely on the deeds of the Torah are under a curse. You know, right there, you're like, see, the Torah is, you're cursed if you follow the Torah. That's right away. It's a flag.
Yep.
But I have to drive the kids to school.
Yeah.
So I'm going to drive 30 minutes.
Thanks for getting us through a rough morning.
It was a good
I
morning.
may or may not have been naughty this morning.
He's like a child. Oh my gosh. I'm like, get on it, man. Be part of the solution here.
Right.
No, he's a good part. He made smoothies. You're wonderful.
Yeah.
But I do need to depart.
All right.
I love you.
Love you more.
Bye, everyone.
I know a lot of you guys only watch this to hear what my wife considers and thinks. So sorry about that. So I use my blue mug to cue my edit points, just so you know that. All right. So Paul went out, when he went and spent his 3 years, what he was doing was he was learning what happened with the covenants, how to separate the covenant of Abraham with the book of the law. The book of the law was a result of the breach of the faithfulness of Israel in Exodus 24. The book of the law is all the things that were written in ordinances. It was not ratified. It didn't need to be. Basically, Israel had gone from being a bride position to being a servitude or a slave position of God. He was no longer had a bride position. It was servant. And part of the servant was, do this and I'll bless you. If you do this, I will curse you. Like a boss, like your employer is your slave master. You are a slave to your employer. He owns you for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. And you do what they say or you get bounced. And that's exactly what had happened. Before, Abraham, he messed up now and again. You know, he gave his wife to the Pharaoh. He did some stuff he wasn't supposed to. On occasion, he didn't immediately get cursed. He was treated with favor. He was treated with mercy, more love. I mean, Yahweh still loves the people of Israel, but it wasn't any longer a marriage. It wasn't any more that beautiful relationship. Now it was a business relationship. So now flash forward, Yeshua came, the seed that came to shatter that and bring us back to Abraham. The letter to the Galatians is all about bringing the relationship with us back to Abraham. So when he says, oh, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Are you so foolish, having begun by the Spirit, that you now perfect yourselves in the flesh? Do you suffer so many things in vain? So he was saying these guys, he brought them the new good news of the gospel, and then they had started going back to believing the book of the law in the circumcision. And then he goes on to explain something, that the faithful relationship with Yahweh didn't start in Acts 2. It started in Genesis. Paul quotes Genesis in Galatians 3. Abraham had held faithful in Yahweh, and he had been considering it for righteousness. You being faithful to Jesus is considered righteousness. But what is being faithful to Jesus? Jesus came to ratify the covenant for us to go back into Genesis to a covenant that was supposed to be ratified on Exodus, Mount Sinai, Exodus 24. That's the called out assembly, which was a covenant made by God to Abraham, which God only ratified while Abraham was sleeping in Genesis 17. 430 years later, and it says this in Galatians, 430 years later, we've got hold on a second. Here we are. Galatians 3:17. So I'm saying this. What had becoming a norm after 430 years? 430 years was from Genesis 17 with the covenant made with Abraham, where God walked in between the split bull through Egypt. 430 years doesn't annul the covenant, which has been getting confirmed beforehand by the Almighty, so as to the promise, but because of the inheritance is given based on a legal norm, it is no more the promise. So the Galatians 3:17 saying this was a covenant. This is not a legal document. It became a legal document in Exodus 32 when they had to rewrite the whatever. So, Galatians, Paul is comparing the walk of faithfulness of Abraham with the walk of the book of the law in the Levitical covenant, which was never ratified because it didn't have to be. So we've got faithfulness of Abraham, book of the law, school teacher, to basically go, all right, so you guys won't follow in faithfulness. Now I got to teach you every stupid thing. So they continually going through this process. Blessings, cursings, do this. Blessings, cursings, do that. And then the priests bombed that. Aaron's own sons offered strange fire to the Lord. So the priests have a horrible track record. The Pharisees have a horrible track record. They somehow managed to hang on to the basics, but Israel got sent away because of their idolatry, and Judah was not afraid. So Judah did even worse, according to the scriptures. So then Jesus comes, and at least the closest thing, a friend of mine said, that the Pharisees were the closest thing to the truth. And they were a disaster. So, hence Jesus was hung on a tree. So Paul talks about that too. You hung the ratifier of the covenant on a tree. The bottom line is this. The word believe is locked into the word faithfulness. If you believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, that is a pledge of faithfulness. there's a difference between failing and making a mistake and then confessing and feeling guilty and shameful and then getting back on the horse and, setting off again. And Jesus died for my sins. I can do whatever I want, and all that. Just got to confess. That is a bad way to try to have a good relationship. In the same way, if you're married to a woman, you're like, oh, I'm married to her. I got a license. I can do whatever I want. And, oh, she's not submitting to me, or, oh, this, or, da-da-da-da-da. I can be a jerk, but this relationship is still valid because whatever. It's fantasy. Anyway, this is grinding through Galatians. Galatians is a very powerful, powerful book. Unfortunately, it's been abused, misused, distorted, twisted by the wolves that call themselves pastor teachers. And it's not even, it is their fault, because once you are thinking you're going to teach something, it's your baby. But this has been distorted since about 100 AD. Kind of, but you can get to the bottom of it. You just have to actually read the book. But problem is pastors want to obey the theologians that gave them the system instead of just simply obeying the scriptures. When you pledge faithfulness, you're supposed to also be faithful to the handbook. So read the handbook, or a couple of them, so you can compare. So. Anyway, I hope you guys have a blessed day. I know you will. And I know I already have, because I already got an opportunity to humble myself and apologize to my wife this morning. So, ciao. I know, it's time to wake up.